Order, please. Could we have a roll?
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Cross?
Here.
Mr. Berezinski?
Here.
Mr. Engel?
Here.
Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Jaeger?
Here.
Mr. Plummer?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Form is fine.
The next order of business, or the first order of business, is approval of the agenda. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. And it's approved. Next order is a presentation to us, and Mark, would you like to introduce?
Thank you, Mark Eisenberg, Director of the Wastewater Facility. Today we have Dr. Larry Blackmere and Scott Decker in the white shirt, and then in the back, Jack Kennedy. All you guys probably know. They're here to present an idea that they've been working on. They have been looking at algae over the years, and they kind of expanded that algae into this new presentation that they're. And again, I just seen the thing myself, so it's worthwhile for you guys to be informed. There's no decision today on the agenda to have any decisions made that will move forward or not forward. That's not what we're looking for today. We're just giving information item only, and gives us something to start discussing in the future.
Sure. Good afternoon. One of the cardinal rules of doing a PowerPoint presentation is not to read to the people that's on the screen, so I'm going to try not to do that. I'm also going to try to use this correctly here. One of the things that we've been working on for about the last year and a half now is the concept of an integrated facility to produce power and to encourage industry and business in Muskegon County. Notice on your screen the concept is basically that of developing an integrated park. And an integrated park is that type of a park in which the various park occupants produce a byproduct or a waste product that becomes a fuel stock for an energy facility. What we're looking at here is to expand the concept of what AES has been working on to a more regional type of perspective. So what I'd like to have you do for the next hour as I speak, I understand I have 15 minutes, I'm going to crank through, is to view what we're talking about in a more regional perspective other than just Muskegon County. Because Muskegon County then becomes the hub of the activity that we're looking at. And we're smart enough to know that there are also challenges. And one of the lines that I have lived my particular professional life with is what you see on the screen, that no problem can for long withstand the onslaught of focused thought. AES does not believe in a minute that it can pull this thing off by itself. It's going to need a lot of different players, it's going to need a lot of different partners, and we're going to find obstacles along the way if we move forward with this project that I think people in this room and people that you have connectivity with and people in county government can bring to the table and can resolve. We're looking at the wastewater treatment facility for a number of reasons. Number one, it provides for those types of companies that we would be interested in a very large supply of fresh water as well as wastewater treatment that they would require. It also has available land. I draw to your attention here in a moment one of the pieces here that we're going to be looking at, which is the availability of other kinds of infrastructure. The thing that we're really interested in here is bullet item number 3. And the third bullet item speaks to that availability of waste products. And this is where this plan becomes, I think, somewhat unique. We have had some informal conversations with companies as far away as Australia to as nearby as Muskegon County itself, relative to what would be the possibility of them locating a new industry, a new business, a new operation in Muskegon County. The companies that you see, the types of things you see on the screen right now, are those kinds of companies that produce a waste. That waste can be generated, can be reconfigured, and can be put into an electrical power. Muskegon has tremendous resources. In addition to its people, it has all of the things that you see on the screen. The railway system, the deep water port, and the bottom one is where AES is really interested. This is where we got started on this whole concept. And I got to tell you that our first conversations with the U.S. Department of Commerce was strictly about building a facility for AES. And they very quickly said, you know, you need to take a look at a more countywide perspective. You need to take a look at an industrial park and these kinds of things. And it began to snowball from there. This is the rendering of the planning for the north, I believe it's the north side of the waste facility, as was platted by Eggleston Township and Muskegon County. Absolutely nothing wrong with that concept. The platting is right on target with what we would look at. But AES, when we looked at this, we looked at it just a little bit differently. And you can see the two large blocks. Does this have a pointer on it, by the way?
Yes, that little red.
Does nothing for me.
Yeah, that's the red button. Right here. All it is.
Okay, being technologically challenged today.
That was the one.
Notice the two long yellow boxes are, that run adjacent to the lagoon is basically the same plotting that you saw for the Eggleston one. The additional one in the lower left-hand corner of your screen is the yellow box, which is almost perfectly square. That encompasses about another 100 acres, with Maple Island and White Rose being as the two terminal points there. So what we're looking at is expanding the concept beyond the 210 acres that was originally plotted to an additional 100. Notice also that there's a line that runs across there that represents an underground gas main. And that in itself is extremely important to the idea of an integrated facility. What we're looking to do is to jump right down to bullet number 4, the last bullet on the page. Produce low-cost electricity to provide peak shaving. What we intend to do is to take the waste products that are produced by the industrial park residents, change that into a form that can go through cogeneration, and by that reduce the cost significantly for the operation of the individuals, companies that would be in the facility. We have an architectural rendering of the facility that we first conceptualized. This is the AES cogeneration facility. It prices out at about $3.3 million, and we are already in the process of looking to gain support for that type of facility and that type of structure. The internal workings of it, we look at cogeneration as the main function. We look at pelletization of wood products. We look at the chemical digesting, biodigesting of other kinds of waste products that would be coming into us. And it is an integrated facility in and of itself, capable, quite frankly, of providing its own power, running on its own fuel, and still producing a product and additional electricity to other companies. Feedstocks, this is the piece that really becomes important to the whole operation. And that is that what we look at are what are available in terms of waste, and this is where the U.S. government is really pushing right now, is what is available in the form of waste that you can transfigure into some form of either heat or electrical energy. And notice that algae, we placed it at the top. There's a significant amount of algae growing in the wastewater. The issue is how to get it out and how to process it. Where does Muskegon now get its fuel? Well, if you look at most of it is pipeline, but notice also that there is a lot of western coal, a lot of eastern coal that comes in. The algae, once dried, pressed into a cake, becomes that same type of energy as what you find in eastern or western coal. What we're looking at is trying to find that energy supply that's powered Muskegon's new industrial park locally. If we look at annual tons of algae, we have had estimates from 3 different universities now that there's somewhere between 125,000 and 200,000 tons of algae available to us in the wastewater treatment plant. if it can be taken out and if it can be processed into a fuel. We look at woody cellulose, wheat stubble, corn stover, these kinds of products is also available to us. Again, looking at Muskegon County as a regional site, we look at the distribution of corn stover. Corn stover can be created, can be transformed into a biofuel. And if you look at the numbers of thousands of tons that are available locally, it becomes quite a large number. But when you start to think of Muskegon as a regional center for Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, with our deep water port and with our availability of good roads and railroads, that corn stover from these other areas where it's in high concentrations can be brought to a facility right here in Muskegon very easily. The local farmer can also benefit from this in that the studies that we have been reading basically suggest that if the farmer tills all of his corn stover back into the ground for fertilizer for the next year's crop, that's good use of that corn stover. But only about half of that is really needed. So the farmer could pull another half of his corn stover off the his fields and sell it as an additional cash crop. We've looked at the possible gallons of fuel that can be produced. There's a initiative by the federal government now, by the year 2020, to produce something like over 1 billion gallons of biofuel from the types of byproducts that we're talking about here. In terms of kilowatts per pound, each of these it looked very favorable compared to the generation of electricity by coal. When we start to break it down into dollars per cost per kilowatt, it also becomes very favorable. What we're interested in assisting our...
Could you back up and show that last one again? Natural gas. Okay, thank you.
Natural gas? Natural gas is at its very lowest price right now. And one of the things that is intriguing about the wastewater site is the availability of natural gas. So within AES's facility, which becomes kind of the hub of that entire industrial park, we could utilize that natural gas through cogeneration, provide electricity to the park at a price cheaper than they will be able to pull off of the grid. I'm sorry. Let's talk about peak shaving a little bit. Scott Decker, who has a very long history of involvement with diesel generation, did a study of a large grocery store not too far from here and took a look at what the cost of that operation was in terms of electricity off the grid. And then took a look at it in terms of cogeneration and peak shaving and found that for that little store, the alternative energy format could save up to close to $3,000 on an $8,000 budget. That's significant. When we can start to talk to companies about those kinds of savings to come to Muskegon, I think we have a real strong talking point. Peak shaving, for those of you who haven't had to play with that concept before, is basically the difference between the top of the red line and the top of the blue line. The top of the red line represents the cost, or the draw, not the cost, but the draw of power off the grid for a particular company over a period of time. Peak shaving basically uses an alternative form of energy, puts that energy back into that operation at a lower cost, and the difference between the highest point of the red and the highest point of the blue is the amount of kilowatts of energy that you save. And kilowatts of energy translates back into hard dollars and hard cents. Jack Kennedy, who is our expert in construction, ran some estimates in terms of what might be the cost to bring this the infrastructure up to grade at the wastewater site. And we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.1 million. Now, the federal government right now has a lot of different initiatives out there. And we have been talking with a number of them. I'll show you the ones we've been talking here in a minute. And each of them have shown interest in this type of a project. So finding those dollars, I think, is doable, provided that we work on it from a proper perspective. Looking at a brewery, and everybody loves a brewery, right? This particular brewery spends a little over $100,000 a year in energy costs. But if we took a look at it from a cogeneration standpoint, it's about $60,000, about a $40,000 savings. When you can start talking to the companies about saving those kinds of dollars, I think you have a real strong talking point. Another advantage, looking at the numbers, the benefits to Muskegon County, Jack estimates that the construction of the facilities and the infrastructure for the companies would probably run somewhere around 225 jobs for 2 years. Now, every construction job is basically a temporary job, but these are family-sustaining types of jobs in construction. When we take a look at the types of companies that we've been talking about bringing in, we're looking at somewhere around 450 new jobs in Muskegon County. And I think at any time that we can talk about any addition of jobs in Muskegon County, we're talking a favorable thing to the citizens of this area. Here's what we've been talking to about financing. We've been looking at the federal sources primarily. We have not yet talked with local and state. We have been investigating the possibility of large numbers of dollars. And we have had very favorable responses to the alternative energy company that we're talking about from each of the federal sources that you see here. We have only talked to the Department of Commerce about the industrial park, only because they brought the idea to us. When we were presenting about AES and about our integrated facility, the Commerce Department says, wait a minute, we think we have a better plan. If you can incorporate that into an industrial park, we can find the dollars, we think, to make that happen. And notice I added the we think, because never anything is 100% sure. We're also looking at investment capital. We do have some folks that have indicated an interest in stepping forward. I know too that there are resources possibly in this audience right here who have the ability to seek these kinds of individuals as well. The next steps, we don't want to do anything until we have a blessing from the people who own the land. If Muskegon County says go ahead with this, then we would be putting together a task force and working with you to have conversations with each of these agencies. They are interested and they are ready to move forward. An immediate need right now is, I'm in the process of writing a grant. That's going to be about $1.4 million. I have to come up with 20% match to find that. If there are agencies out there that can provide match for grants that will work with in county government, within state government, I'd like to see who those folks are, because we certainly need that kind of thing. Did I stay within my 15 minutes, Corporate Counsel? Thank you. Questions? Now, because I'm not expert in everything, in fact, I'm expert in very little. I also have Scott and Jack here, so if I don't have a clue, I'm going to point. Okay, yes, sir.
My question is the site development numbers here, the $4,144,000, is that just for the development of the project? I mean, because
I'm going to defer to Jack, who came up with the numbers.
Yeah, Scott, it's just the site that's there in Ingleton on Maple Island Road and the other site on White Road north of there. And the water system would come from the well over on Broden. It doesn't connect the water. I'm not sure. I think the last main stop, Dave, you can help me, or John, or whoever. I think someplace on Hall Road and somewhere out there, I think is where the last of the water main.
Miller and Apple.
Miller, yeah. Okay. Anyways.
Along that question, sir?
I heard,
Yes.
I heard you say well.
Yes.
That much gallonage from wells?
Yes.
I mean, John, we had an estimate what it would cost to run sewer to the wastewater system there at one time, did we not? was a lot more than $1.18 million.
Oh, yeah, you'd need to put an elevated water tank out there, which would cost every bit of that by itself.
Okay. And then I see the 1.4 for sewer.
Yes.
I mean, it's right there.
Yeah, that's gravity, and then we've got to have a pump station in order to get it up into the system.
So just for my clarification, I think I heard that right. The 1.1 on the water and 1.4 on the sewer, and the roads are basically infrastructure within the boundaries of the park itself. It does not include bringing anything in. We still would have to take a look at whether the well would produce what you need. We still have to look at some form of tank or pressure issues, or getting all the way back into the potable system. So those numbers aren't in there yet.
The roads are from Maple Island back in, and the infrastructure within the park itself.
Infrastructure within the park. Okay, I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Mr. Snyder?
I think I'd love to see this move forward. I think you need, have been some studies on that well. Back in, my recollection is I sat in meetings in Nichols Township in 2003, and it was determined that there's not sufficient flow there for fire suppression, no matter what. So it's probably going to entail bringing water in from the hub. But the hub is there, and my recollection is from John Warner that it's 24 inches and it's more than capable of being run out so that there'd be plenty of water capacity there. I applaud this. I think it's a great concept. I'd like to see you move forward with it. I've mentioned to Scott back a couple of years ago that there are people in town here who are very, very intimately experienced in this business. Mark knows who they are, and I would suggest that Mark can pass that information on to you, and I have the names of a couple of other people that do this quite literally all over the world.
You saw the opening you get? This gentleman right here.
Alan?
I have 3 or 4 questions, Mr. Chairman. It says that there's going to be 225 temporary jobs, and at $40,000 with benefits, that's $9 million. And they said that the completion of the project would be at 11.5. I mean, the numbers don't add very well.
Well, you're right. The numbers that we have are for the infrastructure types of costs, not for the cost of the types of work. This is the kinds of the jobs are going to be paid for by those individuals who come in and decide that they're going to locate there. That's not out of any of the grant money that we would be looking for.
But these numbers don't match. I mean, for future, as people move in, these numbers don't match what the book said it's going to actually be. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
Okay. I would be happy to listen to numbers, sir.
Okay. Before, I have 3 or 4 questions.
I'm sorry.
We've always talked that there need to be 2 forms of transportation, and we only have one there. I mean, are we looking into needing another one, or isn't that necessary? I think Mr. Ed.
Ed Garner, Muskegon area first. Yeah, certainly having 2 modes of transportation will improve the viability of anything we're looking at that particular system out there. At one point, our agencies was looking at getting that classified as a mega lot, which has to have 1,000 acres or more, but you got to have those modes of transportation. The Next Michigan Development Corporation, that interlocal agreement that you guys recently approved, right now, that our property out the county wastewater cannot be included in that because it doesn't have 2 modes of transportation. It has enough acreage, but it doesn't have 2 modes of transportation. So having that, we all know at some point, trying to particularly get water down there, and if we can get additional rail or just some type of secondary mode of transportation out there, would greatly enhance the economic viability of the property out there. But this is all about money, This takes money to do it.
This thing compete with other industrial parks that we presently have, and we can't get people in. So do you feel it's different being how it's out there as like putting it in Dalton or putting it somewhere else instead of building another one?
I think the interest that we found is twofold. First of all, the location of the wastewater facility and the algae from an AES perspective means that we would be able to harvest it there, process it there, produce it into electricity there without having to travel. As I think one of the charts there indicates, when you start to move materials great distances, the price of those materials increase incrementally, and so does the cost of the electricity that's produced because of those. So we look at it from that perspective. It's also a nice location in terms of the agricultural belt that is adjacent to Muskegon County. If you look at the corn stover chart, you'll see that in Nuevo County, Oceana County, there's several counties around us produce more corn stover than what Muskegon County does. And yet, that's a nice location because of the proximities of major highways and whatnot. To compete with other industrial parks, I think the one way that this industrial park would compete with any nationally would be the fact that embedded in it is its own energy producing facility that would be able to provide both heat and electrical power at a very reduced cost that you're not going to find in most other industrial parks. Yeah, we're going to be a little bit fussy about who comes into that park because we're looking at their waste product as being the type of product, that's what makes it integrated. Pull that waste product out to be able to transform it back into an energy that we can sell back to the companies. Jack?
Just to let you know that one of the things they're working on, and this is how, trying to bring everybody kind of tight knit, is the algae that is, once the oil's taken out of it, they're working with L&L Sawmill, or not L&L, but the pallet company at the corner there, to make a pellet, which is, they've got to get rid of that. So that helps them out in being successful, and they're again with the algae being right there, so they don't have to go after it. The other cool thing about that is the test that came back from Michigan State is that this product was actually more BTUs than what coal has, and it's cleaner.
Just add in passing too that over the course of the year we have developed very strong relationships with Grand Valley State University and with Michigan State University, and they have a lot of interest in the algae also, from the standpoint that it's not only there, but it's from the standpoint that it could be changed into a different form of algae that has a higher algae content. In fact, I'm collaborating with Michigan State University on a grant as we speak to test the various kinds of algae that are there for various kinds of product use, and everything from plastic to pharmaceuticals. And that makes that site just that much more favorable to us. Gentleman over here, I'm sorry, one more. You have one.
Would we, now, you're going to rebuild this infrastructure for it. It's going to be privately run. The actual facilities would become private.
The infrastructure is going to be owned by Muskegon County.
Right.
I don't know what your relationship was on the original plating for the Eccleston Muskegon County facility, that the first one I showed on the screen, the black and white drawing. I don't know how you had that set up, how that was going to work. So I have complete ignorance on that. That's one of the questions that I've asked, and I think that's going to have to come out of corporate counsel as to how you're going to deal with those properties once somebody wants to come in and build an infrastructure on it.
Well, I just hate to see us competing with private industry, I guess, so I would like to see private have a stake in it. I would say that myself.
I'm going to take a chance on sticking my foot in my mouth here, but my understanding is that, and this is the way it works with the EDA too, as the funding branch of the DOC, if we're going to try to line up those occupants within the industrial park prior, that would be the perfect way, of course, prior to doing this, and then if a particular industry, whoever it was, let's just say for example the brewery, they'd have the option of either, if the county was willing, to lease the property from the county and build a facility on top of it, or buy the, the property and, have the infrastructure that's provided by the EDA through their funding stop at the property line, and they'd have to take care of everything to the point. It's really, you want to make it as open as possible so that however that particular business feels, if they want to lease, they can lease. If they want to buy, they can buy. On a couple other points, hopefully maybe this will answer some people's questions. I know from speaking to some of the folks on the board that the county is very interested in getting the fresh water lines further east. That this is a good idea, period. I think everybody would agree on that. And one of the things that, we only focused on the well because it keeps the cost down. But one of the things that the Commerce Department has commented is the more regional that we can make this, the more businesses that see this as something that's positive, in other words, prospective occupants, the more the money will flow. And of course, the better option would be to bring the water line. And so for not a minute, don't think we're discluding that idea. That in fact, actually, that would be the better of the two if the funding is available. Another thing that I heard in some of the conversations is the second mode of transportation. That also goes, in our last conversation with the DOC, they were also, in that same mindset, were very possible about extending rail lines, which I know has always been a thought process. And when you're talking about moving literally hundreds of thousands of tons of biomass in order to make a non-food chain based fuel of any type, you need rail lines along with our deep water port. So that is another little infrastructure piece that, depending on how successful it is. And one other comment real quick, the question of why there came up. Well, of course, the algae in the facility itself. You've got 19 square miles of county-owned property that I know that the goal has always been since its inception in the 70s is to use it to its greatest potential. So there's that. And then also, another thing that's really unique about the property is the county owns all of its own power lines. And because of that, the law states that if you have property that is contiguous, I love that word, and you own your own power lines, you can distribute power without getting the blessing of consumers or getting the blessing of the Michigan Public Service Commission, which actually they promote this idea. They like it. They're the ones that taught me that rule. They taught me. So we could do this peak shaving within the industrial park because of the fact that the power lines are owned already. So we wouldn't have to put that part of the infrastructure in.
Before I take the gentleman's question over here.
Right, Jim, I'm technically running the
let me just add,
so Jim, do you have?
Let me just add one quick thing, and that is that it needs to be understood that a major portion of the money that we have talked to the Department of Commerce about are those dollars that go to county governments. So the county would be very much in the driver's seat in terms of how the dollars flow and this type of thing. AES is very receptive to working hand in glove with you, but this is going to have to be, when the dollars start to flow, the dollars will flow to the county government.
Scott, I'm glad to hear that the water line is predominant in your mind. One thing I didn't mention is the potential of available methane in this. I know we're working on that. I'd like to see the use of algae, and just a thought, Mr. Decker, I want to put this in your mind. There are 9 lakes in Muskegon County that poison, use 2,4-D and some of these other herbicides to kill these algae, but especially Eurasian milfoil or weeds. There are places that harvest those. Are they a biofuel?
One of the companies that we work with, a company out of Ohio, just recently harvested at about 25% solids, 1,700 pounds of algae in a couple of days from an open lake. And basically, you start at the wastewater because the natural concentration of algae that we get at the wastewater, when I send samples off for it to be tested, They always ask me this question: what did you do to that before you sent it to us? Nothing. I scooped it out of the lagoon. So our wastewater is an actual natural concentrator. But yes, once we get the 186,000 tons of algae potential at the wastewater, yes, some of the area lakes where fertilizer has caused an overabundant growth of algae, yeah, you could actually look at it as a remediation factor, just much like it would be for the wastewater. If we can get, you know, the algae more under control where it's being harvested, it'll also be a remediation factor for them.
What's the name of the algae out here?
Most of it's blue-green algae microcystis. They've actually given it, put it in its own little category, microcystis, which is kind of not, just kind of saying like it's a hybrid between algae and some other
We're
things.
seeing this on a lot of our lakes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's very similar to the same blue-green algae that grows in the lakes. Yes, sir.
One more question.
Yeah, I would like to echo, I think, what Commissioner Snyder said earlier. I think put a lot of work into it. It's a very nice presentation. And the concept of integrated parks is nothing new. I mean, it comes out of Europe, and I don't know why we haven't gotten into that line many years ago, so it just kind of makes sense. I would like to essentially just personally encourage you to, you know, pull the rest of the stuff together. No project or idea in its infancy is going to have all the answers. And I don't expect this to happen here. I needed to ask some questions, but I mean, I would encourage you to pull some of the rest of the numbers together and contact, you know, Mark and John relative to the utilities, and then I'd like to know formally what you guys really are asking us to do, because when you're talking to the feds and the state and everything, yeah, they're going to pull us in, and so I think there would have to be something official that you're coming to us with. So.
What we need from Muskegon County is the commitment to move forward with this project with us, to facilitate that with us. We cannot say to the public or anybody else that this is anywhere near a done deal. There are a lot of obstacles that are going to have to come. The questions that were raised by all of you today are good examples of the kinds of questions that we're going to be facing and having to find solutions for. This is not going to be a simple task. This is going to require the state government getting on board with us. So with my next steps, if we get a nod from the county to move forward with this, we would put together that kind of team. We would then be starting to talk to our state reps and our federal senators and getting them on board. I've been around the grant business long enough to know that it's one thing to find a grant on the web and seek it. It's another to have other people already knowing about you to find those dollars. And we now have the U.S. Department of Commerce sitting there saying, hey guys, let's move forward on this project. We think we can find you all the kinds of dollars you need to make this happen. And the estimates, the numbers out there, please don't hold our feet to the fire on those, because they are the best estimates that we have at this time. Have we done due diligence? Yes. We've looked at this thing, we've studied it, we believe it is possible. And I, as an old Muskegon County resident from years ago growing up in Ravenna, would like nothing more than to drive by that facility where my uncle's farm used to be and be able to look out there and see people going to work on a daily basis to make money to sustain their families. And if I get that out of this, with whatever few shekels I might pull from Mr. Decker here, I would be a pretty happy person. So I would challenge the county to take this thing seriously, and let's move forward with it.
Thank you for your presentation. I think there are too many unanswered questions for us to do anything until they get answered. But certainly, we need to work with our staff and see how it fits in the plans of the county and the other subunits within the county. And then at some later time, I don't think anyone here is opposed to what you're saying. It's simply there isn't enough information. It isn't finite enough for us to go beyond that, I don't believe. So thank you for your presentation. John, would you like to speak?
Well, I would disagree. I would like to offer a motion to encourage you to continue with your planning.
I'll support that.
I think this is a step in the right direction. That isn't to say that there's a conclusion that you're in or anything else. But I would like to, as I say, offer a motion that encourages you to continue with this development. That's all I'm going to do at this point, is encourage you. I think it's great.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I'm just curious, would that be working with staff?
Yes, whatever it
Might
takes.
clarify that today,
Yeah.
because I think that's what Marv's getting at, is there's answers out there that maybe they need to get answered before they go somewhere. I hate to see them go and then John and Mark say it can't be done. So as long as they're working with staff, I think it's a good idea too.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Berezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes. Thank you for.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I guess the next order of business is approval of minutes of the last meeting. Been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or changes? If not, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. The next order of business is accounts payable. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to pay the current accounts payable. Questions, comments? Roll call.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Berezinski?
Stepped up.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
And Mr. Kelley?
Yes.
Next segment of our meeting is public comment on an agenda item. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on one of our current agenda items? If not, we'll move on. Karen, will you take that into consideration, please?
Sure. Number one is agreement with Field Technology Services.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agreement with Field Technology. Is there any questions or comments? Pardon?
For Mr. Warner?
Oh, John?
John, during the pre-session, I had a question and I forgot to ask you because I was kind of trying to catch up there, but there's nothing in this, it refers to a letter that you sent out that had some requirements that they had to meet. Was there insurance and all that kind of stuff taken care of in your first letter that they're agreeing to? Because I don't see anything in here on liability elements to be on the site.
Yeah, John Warner, Public Works Department. Yes, they do provide for us an insurance certificate, and they have safety equipment as needed, proper to be on the site. So yet, we do make sure that nobody goes on that site without being insured by somebody and without the proper equipment.
I assumed that to be the answer, but it wasn't written on,
Yeah.
on the actual proposal, so I just
No,
want to make
it
sure.
was not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Berezinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number two is award purchase of litter screens.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the purchase of litter screens for solid waste. Is there question or comments?
Will you be able to move them around with a loader or?
Yeah, actually, the way these things work, they are units that are, I can't remember if these ones are 20 or 24 feet long. But they're a big screen unit, and they have a hook right in the middle of them that you can either pick them up with the loader, or with the trash compactor, or with a bulldozer. And that was one of our bid requirements, is that these units had to be moved around, and we listed our specific pieces of equipment that we have. And yes, both of these companies meet that.
I'm surprised they don't have like tires, because the wind's a different direction every day I'm up there.
And that's just the reason. These screens are meant to be able to be moved around anytime you need them. Buy your equipment on site. That's the whole purpose of it, is so that, you know, as the wind changes, you can move them around with what you have available.
And I take these are going to be located up high.
The way these work is that you put them right at the face that you're working on, so that it keeps the litter within the working area.
Nothing near the existing fencing.
Nope. The existing fencing will stay right where it is. That'll be kind of a secondary containment, if you will.
If I may, while you're up there, those homes that we have demolishing and moving, are we cleaning up those properties afterwards?
Yes.
I have a concern about one that was moved or taken down.
The most recent one where the gentleman purchased the house and moved it up, he did not do a good job of cleaning it up, and we need to get back with him and clean that up.
Further questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jacob?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Derzinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
Mr. Frost?
Yes.
Motion carried. Number 3 is authorization to bid pump and hose sludge.
So moved.
It's been moved and second to send out a bid to either pump or haul the sludge to our secondary bins. Some questions or comments? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. Motion passes.
Number 4 is repair White Road.
So moved.
Answer.
Why is it that MCRC doesn't need an engineering inspection, but I don't understand why they would get away with not having it?
Hello, Mark Eisenbarth again. It's not the inspection that we're getting away from. They still follow all the regulations that everyone else does. They have their own engineering staff, and they have their own staff that do inspections as the work's being done. When we don't have that engineering staff to do roads, so we'd have to bring in an engineer to write the specifications on the roads well enough so it can go out to bid to anybody who's interested in who does this type of work. They have their own set of specs that they follow themselves, and they do this work throughout the county, and they're right there on our property.
This is a private road, the county actually insists on that.
Yes.
And so, have we ever had a comparison shop, you know, like, we had other roads done by private where we had a comparison between MCRC and then a private company doing it, or we have no comparison?
Not really for chip and seal material that we're proposing to do. I did talk to them about that, you know, I said, what do you think the cost difference would be? She said, well, it's probably break even on the cost. Because one, they went ahead and went out and received their own chip and seal bids. So we're using their bids that they received already for the year. So really we're paying their labor costs. Well, can another company do it a little bit cheaper on labor? Maybe so. The cost that we see the saving is I don't have to go out and hire an engineering firm to write the specifications to do the job.
And I might mention that the road commission does it from Kent out of Winnebago. They go all over doing this chip and seal because we do it pretty good.
We get to keep the money here.
Absolutely. All bad.
No brainer.
Is there any further question or comment?
It says very bottom line, cost would be 100% wastewater responsibility. Shouldn't that be split between that and solid in the landfill?
That'd be a great idea, but I didn't ask for that, so no.
No, I mean, but the landfill.
It's ours. It's exactly the river runs east and west. The landfill don't use it. but I like the idea.
That was a good idea.
Way to go, Mark.
Any other further questions, comments?
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Derzinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Callen?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
No.
Motion carried. Number 5 is letter to the Mason.
So move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to have me sign the letter from the county to the Mesa. Is there questions or comments? John?
Boy, I'd sure like to see a get back to us by date.
And that's encouraged.
I
You
know.
want to put that on there? I've been talking to them. Mr. Williams has also been talking to them that we want something back next month. May 10th, I believe, is what it is. And we'll be meeting again, and I've been telling them we need that contract in front of us to sign and to move forward with this job. So if you want to add it to it, you're more than welcome.
Either that or hand delivery.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Derzinski?
Yes.
Mr. Engel?
Yes.
Mr. Callen?
Yes.
Mr. Plummer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkins?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Jaeger?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 6 is informational items. We have the monthly reports. Are there any questions or comments on those? Okay, I think we then, actually, we have 3 of them now. We have the water system too. We move on. Is there any old business to come before this board? Any old business? Any new business? This is the section of our meeting set aside for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on a new item? Adjourn. Second? Closed session. Oh, is there a closed session? All right.
No, she wants it back.
Oh, she wants it back. What's coming up?
John Warner.
No, okay. No, okay, wondering, because this was kind of a surprise.
Can I talk to you for a second?
Handing stuff back from the
I knew somebody was coming.
Should put some money in the bottom of the road.
All the money that Freeland Township paid by county temporary, $55,000, select cut of 12 years.
You don't have anything?
staff.
No, I wasn't saying
High in the air. Take a look at it. There's some oak trees in there.
What, at our meeting?
Buzz and I have talked about this.
You're No, but I threw her name on there. She got hit me out. Crossed and where you want. I have it. I was waiting Hopefully you work something out again next year.
I feel
That won't come out in such good shape.
She started at a CDL, you learned a CDL.
And I can help you. If I cover it.
That's what I tried, that's what
Well, we'll work on I knew this was coming up, but it's still
Well, I guess that's why we disagree on something.
still going on. Oh, Jesus, tell your baby. You told me to take it. What's going on? Hey,
You don't wear hard hats, we don't.
Oh, they did.
They did. I just paid $2 million. I do look at more analogies.
Surveys.
You're on. I called you.
Yeah, I know.
That's why professional
I don't, I just tune
I know it because I got calls on it going.
It is what it is.